For the first time in months, Hamas has hit Israel with fresh rocket attacks. The militant group says it launched a large barrage of projectiles on Tel Aviv from Rafah today. Journalist Iris Mackler is here now with the details from Jerusalem. Iris, bring us up to speed here about what we know.
What we know was that the barrage of something like 8 rockets, I don't know how many were fired, but that's how many Israel said crossed into Israeli airspace. Most of them were intercepted. It has to be said. There was minor injury, minor damage, very few injuries to people, but nevertheless, most of that was injuries from shrapnel. But nevertheless, Israelis in the center of the country were running for their bomb shelters, and the airport was closed for a short time. So it did have an impact on Israel. And what Hamas says, it's interesting. First of all, it's 4 months since the last such barrage to central Israel. And Hamas claimed responsibility pretty smartly, and they said they were doing it in retaliation, and I quote, for Israel's massacres. What Israel says is this. They are firing from Rafah. That's also significant. They're firing from Rafah as Israeli troops advance, and they know that once those rocket and weapons stores are located, Israel will destroy them. So I guess use it or lose it. They're using it before they can be destroyed. Nevertheless, they have given some ammunition, if you like, to right-wing politicians in Israel who say, how can you stop fighting in Rafah when there's still sufficient weapons there to be fired into central Israel?
And this latest escalation came hours after aid trucks entered Gaza from southern Israel through a new agreement to bypass the Rafah crossing with Egypt. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. Hundreds of trucks were lined up outside the Rafah crossing. Since Israel took that crossing on May the 6th, nothing has gone in. Now they've moved, it's not far, 5 kilometres down the road to an Israeli border crossing, and they're going in from there. Some 200 trucks apparently ready to go in because much of the food, especially the fresh food on the others, has already spoiled. We have heard from Palestinian sources inside the Gaza Strip that 8 trucks have gone in with fuel and cooking gas. And that is significant because what's coming in from the other pier, the floating pier that the US has set up, is a smaller amount of aid. It's more expensive to get in, and it doesn't come in the same quantities. So everybody is in favour and advocating for aid to come in via land through the old system, through these border crossings. However, the problem is distribution. What we're hearing from UNRWA, the UN Refugee Agency, is that once it gets in, it's hard to get it out. It's hard to get it out to people because there's a war on. It's hard to get it out, especially to the something like 900,000 Palestinians estimated to be on the coast, having fled Rafah. How do you get them? It's basically a coastal area. There's nothing there but the tents that they put up. There's no infrastructure. How do you supply them during this time? So all of those issues, nevertheless, it has to be said, the fact that some aid is going in is a huge advance.
Thanks for this, Iris. That's Iris Mackler in Jerusalem. For more on the situation in Gaza, we spoke earlier with Aurélie Godard. She's a medical team leader in Gaza for Doctors Without Borders, and she told us about her recent experience doing humanitarian work there.
So the exodus we unfortunately witnessed was something, for me, unprecedented. These 700,000 people fleeing Rafah was something terrible. It was a constant queue of people being left with almost anything and just fleeing again, and ending up in makeshift tents. So they move just by fear, but they're exhausted. They can't take it anymore, and every extra challenge, they were having access to, let's say, a food supply in Rafah. This food supply disappears because there's not enough aid coming in. This aid is not reaching them because they moved. And again, the pace in Kerem Shalom, it's still a war zone, Kerem Shalom. So it can't match the needs. And at any point of time, it cannot. It will not. So they're just desperate. They just want the war to stop because they can't take it anymore. So it's extremely difficult on a daily basis to witness that, to know that we could change it, because if we open Rafah wide open, then the aid will flow in and will reach the people when they need, where they need. It's just a matter of political pushes, I would say. And it's extremely frustrating for us to see the needs, to have a solution for the needs. It's not as if there's no food. The food is sitting just across the border. So it's not, there's no crops, there's nothing to eat. It's just, how do we get it in? And that is beyond our means in terms of humanitarian workers, but it's extremely frustrating to know we have the solution. It's not put in place for reluctancies from many people on both sides.
That was Aurélie Godard, medical team leader in Gaza for Doctors Without Borders.